The Squaw by Bram Stoker. Nuremberg at the time was not so much exploited as it has been since then. Irving had not been playing Faust, and the very name of the old town was hardly known to the great bulk of the travelling public. My wife and I, being in the second week of our honeymoon, naturally wanted someone else to join our party, so that when the cheery stranger, Elias P. Hutcheson, hailing from Isthmian City, Bleeding Gulch, Maple Tree County, Nebraska, turned up at the station at Frankfurt, and casually remarked that he was going on to see the most all-fired old Methuselah of a town in Europe, and that he guessed that so much travelling alone was enough to send an intelligent, active citizen to the melancholy ward of a daft house, we took the pretty broad hint and suggested that we should join forces. We found, on comparing notes afterwards, that we had each intended to speak with some diffidence or hesitation so as not to appear too eager, such not being a good compliment to the success of our married life. But the effect was entirely marred by our both beginning to speak at the same instant, stopping simultaneously and then going on together again. Anyhow, no matter how it was done, and Elias P. Hutcheson became one of our party. Straightway Amelia and I found the pleasant benefit. Instead of quarrelling, as we had been doing, we found that the restraining influence of a third party was such that we now took every opportunity of spooning in odd corners. Amelia declares that ever since she has, as a result of that experience, advised all her friends to take a friend on the honeymoon. Well, we did Nuremberg together, and much enjoyed the racy remarks of our transatlantic friend, who, from his quaint speech and his wonderful stock of adventures, might have stepped out of a novel. We heard from the last object of interest in the city to be visited the Burg, and on the day appointed for the visit strolled round the outer wall of the city by the eastern side. The Burg is seated on a rock dominating the town, and an immensely deep fosse guards it on the northern side. Nuremberg has been happy in that it was never sacked. Had it been, it would certainly not be so spick and span perfect as it is at present. The ditch has not been used for centuries, and now its base is spread with tea gardens and orchards, of which some of the trees are of quite respectable growth. As we wandered round the wall, dawdling in the hot July sunshine, we often paused to admire the views spread before us, and in especial the great plain covered with towns and villages and bounded with a blue line of hills, like a landscape of Claude Lorraine. From this we always turn with new delight to the city itself, with its myriad of quaint old gables, and acre-wide red roofs dotted with dormer windows, tier upon tier. A little to our right rose the towers of the Burg, and nearer still, standing grim, the Torture Tower, which was, and is, perhaps, the most interesting place in the city. For centuries the tradition of the Iron Virgin of Nuremberg has been handed down as an instance of the horrors of cruelty of which man is capable. We had long looked forward to seeing it, and here, at last, was its home. In one of our pauses we leaned over the wall of the moat and looked down. The garden seemed quite 50 or 60 feet below us, and the sun pouring into it with an intense, moveless heat like that of an oven. Beyond rose the garden, grim wall seemingly of endless height, and losing itself right and left in the angles of bastion and counterscarp. Trees and bushes crowned the wall, and above again towered the lofty houses on whose massive beauty time has only set the hand of approval. The sun was hot and we were lazy. Time was our own, and we lingered, leaning on the wall. Just below us was a pretty sight. A great black cat lying stretched in the sun, whilst round her gambolled pretty a tiny black kitten. The mother would wave her tail for the kitten to play with, or would raise her feet and push away the little one, as an encouragement to further play. They were just at the foot of the wall, and Elias P. Hutcheson, in order to help the play, stooped and took from the walk a moderate-sized pebble. "See," he said, "I will drop it near the kitten, and they will both wonder where it came from." "Oh, be careful," said my wife. "You might hit the dear little thing." "Not me, ma'am," said Elias P. "Why, I'm as tender as a Maine cherry tree. Lord bless you, I wouldn't hurt the poor putty little critter more'n I'd scalp a baby. And you may bet your variegated socks on that. See, I'll drop it fur away on the outside so as not to go so near." Thus saying, he leaned over and held his arm out at full length and dropped the stone. It may be that there is some attractive force which draws lesser matters to greater, or more probably that the wall was not plump but sloped to its base, we not noticing the inclination from above, but the stone fell with a sickening thud that came up to us through the hot air, right on the kitten's head, and shattered out its little brains then and there. The black cat cast a swift upward glance, and we saw her eyes like green fire fixed an instant on Elias P. Hutcheson, and then her attention was given to the kitten, which lay still with just a quiver of her tiny limbs, whilst a thin red stream trickled from a gaping wound. With a muffled cry, such as a human being might give, She bent over the kitten, licking its wounds and moaning. Suddenly she seemed to realize it was dead, and again threw up her eyes at us. I shall never forget the sight, for she looked the perfect incarnation of hate. Her green eyes blazed with lurid fire, and the white, sharp teeth seemed to almost shine through the blood which dabbled her mouth and whiskers. She gnashed her teeth, and her claws stood out stark and at full length on every paw. Then she made a wild rush up the wall as if to reach us, but when the momentum ended fell back, and further added to her horrible appearance, for she fell upon the kitten, and rose with her black fur smeared with its brains and blood. Amelia turned quite faint, and I had to lift her back from the wall. There was a seat close by in shade of a spreading plane tree, and here I placed her while she composed herself. Then I went back to Hutcheson, who stood without moving, looking down on the angry cat below. As I joined him, he said, "Well, I guess that air the savagest beast I ever see, 'cept once when an Apache squaw had an edge on a half-breed, which they nicknamed Splinters, 'cause the way he fixed up her papoose, which he stole on a raid just to show they appreciated the way they had given his mother the fire torture. She got that kind of look so set on her face that it just seemed to grow there. She followed Splinters more'n 3 years, till at last the braves got him and handed him over to her. They did say that no man, white nor Injun, had ever been so long a-dying under the tortures of the Apaches. The only time I ever seen her smile was when I wiped her out. I came on the camp just in time to see Splinters passing his checks, and he wasn't sorry to go either. He was a hard citizen, and though I never could shake with him after that papoose business, what was bitter bad, and he should have been a white man, for he looked like one. I see he got payout in full, during me, but I took a piece of his hide from one of his skinning posts and had it made into a pocketbook. It's here now," and he slapped the breast pocket of his coat. Whilst he was speaking, the cat was continuing her frantic efforts to get up the wall. She would take a run back and then charge up, sometimes reaching an incredible height. She did not seem to mind the heavy fall, which she had each time but started with renewed vigor, and at every tumble her appearance became more horrible. Hutcheson was a kind-hearted man. My wife and I had both noticed little acts of kindness to animals as well as to persons, and he seemed concerned at the state of fury to which the cat had wrought herself. "Well now," he said, "I do declare that poor creature seems quite desperate. There, poor thing, it was all an accident, though that won't bring back your little one to you. Say, I wouldn't have had such a thing happen for 1,000. Just shows what a clumsy fool of a man can do when he tries to play. Seems I'm too darn slipper-handed to even play with a cat. Say, Colonel," it was a pleasant way he had to bestow titles freely, "I hope your wife don't hold no grudge against me on account of this unpleasantness. Why, I wouldn't have had it occur on no account." He came over to Amelia and apologized profusely, and she, with her usual kindness of heart, hastened to assure him that she quite understood that it was an accident. Then we all went again to the wall and looked over. The cat, missing Hutcheson's face, had drawn back across the moat, and was sitting on her haunches, as though ready to spring. Indeed, the very instant she saw him, she did spring, and with a blind, unreasoning fury, which would have been grotesque, only that it was so frightfully real. She did not try to run up the wall, but simply launched herself at him, as though hate and fury could lead her wings to pass straight through the great distance between them. Amelia, womanlike, got quite concerned, and said to Elias P. in a warning voice, "Oh, you must be very careful. That animal would try to kill you if she were here. Her eyes look like positive murder." He laughed out jovially. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "I can't help but laughing. Fancy a man that has fought grizzlies and Injuns being careful of being murdered by a cat." When the cat heard him laugh, her whole demeanor seemed to change. She no longer tried to jump or run up the wall, but went quietly over, and sitting again beside the dead kitten, began to lick and fondle it as though it were alive. "See," said I, "the effect of a really strong man. Even that animal, in the midst of her fury, recognizes the voice of a master, and bows to him." "Like a squaw," was the only comment of Elias P. Hutcheson, as we moved on our way round the city fosse. Every now and then we looked over the wall, and each time we saw the cat following us. At first she had kept going back to the dead kitten, and then as the distance grew greater, took it in her mouth, and so followed. After a while, however, she abandoned this, for we saw her following all along. She had evidently hidden the body somewhere. Amelia's alarm grew at the cat's persistence, and more than once she repeated her warning, but the American always laughed with amusement, till finally, seeing that she was beginning to be worried, he said, "I say, ma'am, you needn't be scared over that cat. I go heeled, I do." Here he slapped his pistol pocket at the back of his lumbar region. "Why, sooner than have you worry, I'll shoot the critter right here, and risk the police interfering with a citizen of the United States for carrying arms contrary to regulations. As he spoke he looked over the wall, but the cat on seeing him retreated, with a growl, into a bed of tall flowers, and was hidden. He went on, "Blessed that our critter ain't got no more sense of what is good for her than most Christians. I guess we've seen the last of her. You bet she'll go back now to that busted kitten and have a private funeral of it, all to herself." Amelia did not want to say more, lest he might, in mistaken kindness to her, fulfill his threat of shooting the cat, and so she went on and crossed the little wooden bridge leading to the gateway, whence ran the steep paved roadway between the burg and the pentagonal torture tower. As we crossed the bridge we saw the cat again down below us. When she saw us her fury seemed to return, and she made frantic efforts to get up the steep wall. Hutcheson laughed as he looked down at her, and said, "Good-bye, old girl. Sorry I injured your feelings, but you'll get over it in time. So long." And then we passed through the long, dim archway, and came to the gate of the burg. When we came out again, our survey of this most beautiful old place, which not even the well-intentioned efforts of the Gothic restorers of 40 years ago have been able to spoil, though their restoration was then glaring white, we seemed to have forgotten the unpleasant episode of the morning. The old lime tree, with its great trunk gnarled with the pressing of nearly 9 centuries, the deep well cut through the heart of the rock by those captives of old, and the lovely view from the city wall whence we heard, spread over almost a full quarter of an hour, the multitudinous chimes of the city, had all helped to wipe out from our minds the incident of the slain kitten. We were the only visitors who had entered the torture tower that morning, so at least said the old custodian, and as we had the place all to ourselves were able to make a minute and more satisfactory survey than would have otherwise been possible. The custodian, looking to us as the sole source of his gains for the day, was willing to meet our wishes in any way. The torture tower is truly a grim place, even now when many thousands of visitors have sent a stream of life, and the joy that follows life, into the place. But at the time I mention, it wore its grimmest and most gruesome aspect. The dust of ages seemed to have settled on it, and the darkness and the horror of its memories seemed to have become sentient in a way that would have satisfied the pantheistic souls of Philo or Spinoza. The lower chamber where we entered was seemingly, in its normal state, filled with incarnate darkness. Even the hot sunlight streaming in through the door seemed to be lost in the vast thickness of the walls, and only showed the masonry rough as when the builder's scaffolding had come down, but coated with dust and marked here and there with patches of dark stain, which, if walls could speak, could have given their own dread memories of fear and pain. We were glad to pass up the dusty wooden staircase, the custodian leaving the outer door open to light us somewhat on our way, for to our eyes the one long-wicked, evil-smelling candle stuck in a sconce on the wall gave an inadequate life,